Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Walking Dead. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're literally picking up after last episode, probably moments later, and people are dropping left and right. Home dude who got his hands cut off, just got his throat slit. Big dude Duncan had multiple knives thrown on him. I was like, yo, that's some it's weird, but my brain immediately thinks of bullseye, because I was like, those knife throws are Daryl was doing some knife throws himself, but it's like, those were deadly, because it's just like, do. It's like, might as well have been hit by bullets, the way they were flying at him. And Gabriel gets a slice to the neck. It's like lambs to the slaughter type of situation. They got some good licks in themselves, but everyone scatters. I think it's so interesting. The one person we don't know what's up with him is Daryl. I guess maybe next time we catch up with this particular situation, we'll see what Daryl's up to. But maybe they also designed it, well, because everyone's going to get their turn anyway. Everyone that kind of scattered that's still alive. But because I was wondering about, I was like, did Thomas Howell survive? I was like, no, he didn't. Once again, the irony of you patched him up and he got an arrow to the eye anyway. Which, once again, I will always go back to, I'm thinking of Denise, but also will always go back to, because he gets brought up this episode, Abraham. That's actually how he died in the comics, because it was actually Dwight that shot him in the eye. I don't know, I think I've talked about that before, but I always think that's so interesting, that how Denise dies is actually how Abraham died in the comics. Because Dwight's the one that shot Abraham. Denise. But regardless, it makes me immediately think of that. Because all you see is, at one point the camera's angled and you see his body and, the arrow, sticking up out of his eye. So I was like, damn. All that trouble to save him and he just ended up... I was like, maybe he's still... I was like, I should have known an arrow to an eye would be enough, Because arrow probably pierces through, got the brain and everything. But, I did like that camera shot of just for one, the close-up light on Maggie. She just, and then she picks up one of their weapons and she throws it, and one of them turns to dodge it and lands in the tree. In the moment they turn back, Maggie's gone. I'm like, dude. Once again, I like that Batman type of stuff of you turn around and you go, it's like, wait, Batman's going. It's that type of stuff. I like camera tricks like that. I think that's so dope when stuff like that happens. But there is kind of no rest, because the moment Maggie finds a place by herself, moment she gets to the door, knife right beside her head, takes off running. It sucks that Walker ended up taking her flashlight with her, and then there's that creepy scene of her lighting up the lighter, and then there's the dude standing beside her. Luckily, she had set up the bottle situation, so he got distracted from the bottles. She ends up attacking him, he ends up falling. We never actually heard a thud. I thought we would have heard a thud of him hitting going down, but all she heard was kind of steps, so it sounded like someone was kind of coming up the steps, so it's no rest. Then meets up with Alden. They both get attacked. Your boy Negan comes through with the saving Maggie, also getting her out of the way of those grenades going off. But Alden's pretty messed up, and these guys made a retreat. I don't know what they're considered, whether they're... I think, are they Reapers? Is that what they're called? You would assume, because the little almost borderline scythe-like weapons, plus the skull mask and everything. So, because I feel like I remember seeing their names somewhere. I'm not familiar with all the groups and stuff like that, just because I've never read the comic and stuff like that. So I don't know if this is a well-known group that's from the comics that's attacking Maggie and them. But Alden's pretty messed up. And so they're both trying to get him out of there, which I even love that whole bit of him being yeah, do you want me to, he's like, yeah, you grabbing my hand isn't going to make me walk any faster. He's like, oh, those things ripping you to pieces going to make you move any faster? And he was just kind of well, if you're so worried about it, why don't you go ahead and start killing them? And then they hear screaming in the distance. And then I love Negan. So we're going towards the screaming. Okay, cool. I'm once again, he's such a smart ass. I love it, because that's that casual response. Cool. I just love that. Because that's just such a natural, it's that, okay, cool. It's kind of got that feel to it. But it ended up being Agatha and obviously the heavily wounded Duncan, and Maggie's apologizing for everything that's happened. He was like, we were lucky. She's like, for a little while we were. And he was like, promise me you're going to get her back home. And he dies. It's just everything went, because this is it. This is the gamble. They know where the supplies are. They just have to get there and get back. Because the whole thing later on turns into well, we shouldn't be on the roads. We should be out of this territory, because even Negan's like, the fact of the matter is, this was just kind of like this is the theatrics. He's like, I understand these theatrics are just showing you, like, he's like, they're showing that they've got control of this place, that they will come after us, so we have to be a little bit smart about it. You know, maybe we should just abandon looking for this stuff. We have to change up the plan. But for Maggie, it's like, this food is what matters. If we do not get this food, everyone back in Alexandria is going to starve, including my son. So it's all or nothing. We have to make this count. So as they continue, there's walkers nearby. There's even someone like tied to a chair with like Judas above their head, which I'm like, are they a religious group? Because there is a dude that Gabriel was chasing after who was praying, and he's like, oh, like, you know, will you pray for me? You know, even though we're enemies, you know, even an enemy deserves like your prayers and stuff like that. Because he was like, it's like, right, you tried to kill my friends. He's like, yeah, and then they tried to kill me. So that's what makes me wonder, was it just kind of like, oh, he's Judas because he's a betrayer, or is it because there is also like some religious element to this group? I'm curious. Just because combined with that and this dude praying. But I don't know whether it's because he saw Gabriel as like, oh, you're a father, so you'll actually pray with me or stuff like that. But I thought it was interesting, the line from Gabriel of like, God isn't here anymore, and kills the dude. Just because like Gabriel isn't the father that he once was. For better or for worse in certain regards. But I'm assuming the biggest contributor to this, I mean, it's considering everything that's going on and like, right, it's kind of kill or be killed type of thing. That's kind of been the vibe of this world for a long time. There's that. Plus, I think his most recent experience, you know, from the bonus episode, him and Aaron, I think that whole experience probably darkened him just a little bit more. I mean, granted, this whole thing has always been a darkening experience for everyone, but I think that in particular darkened. That was an example showcasing of you know, that forgiveness bone inside of Gabriel ain't what it used to be. Which I always think is kind of ironic, considering like how, you know, Rick and them first got introduced to him, and, you know, what his backstory was with, you know, his congregation. So once again, but I think it's like, once again, even him saying those lines like a couple of like at the first episode about, you know, him kind of being like, obviously like God speaking through him, in the sense of him being like, I forgot what the exact line was. I'm going to butcher it, but it was essentially the lines of like, I'm going to talk with him and be fine, you won't be, or something. Like I said, I don't remember it now. It was something of that vein. So it's just, a lot of those lines I just find interesting coming from Gabriel at this point in time, and just like that act of doing what he did, you know. Whether he was hopeful that, oh no, Gabriel would actually pray for him and like be the father he believes him to be, or whether it's just, I don't know. I thought that was such an interesting little scene. But obviously, sadly, Agatha ended up getting God. I was hopeful that when it was all said and done, like maybe it's like, well, she's bitten arms. Like all you have to do is amputate it. Granted, you don't have any like medication on you right now to like deal with all of that. So, but she told them just to go on, and Negan grabbed Maggie so that she wouldn't stick around trying to save. That's the problem. Like Maggie's trying to save everyone, and Negan's the one to like, right, I'm the douchebag that makes the hard decisions. You don't have to like it, but that is my role in this. I'm meant to be the asshole. I've always been the asshole, and sometimes being the asshole is a necessary part to all of this, because, you know, because at the end of the day, he is trying to respect her wishes. He's like, I disagree with you, but at the end of the day, it is your choice. So even Alden's like, right, you got to leave me behind. I'm slowing you down. Even Negan's right about this. Yes, he might be a dick. He might be an asshole, but he is right about this. And you like, what's most important is getting back to Alexandria with the supplies. And for him, it's like, you know, him and Adam, it's like, you know, Adam needs a father. And, you know, I think, you know, Maggie speaking from that was like, right, Herschel having to grow up without one. It's like, you're kind of all that Adam has. So, because obviously, you know, the conversation was like, you coming back all these years later, I'm sure this wasn't what you were expecting. It's like, no, I'm going for a hot second and come back, you're a father, you know. But also the situation is that, aside from that, it's like, all that he heard about, not just about Alexandria, but even Hilltop, it being gone. And that's what pisses Maggie off the most. She's like, this is your fault. Like, we wouldn't be in a situation when we'd still have Hilltop. Yeah, you might have been, part of the group to kill Alpha, but at any point in time, like, you could, yes, it's on Carol, but it's on you because you in particular had a mission and you didn't do it soon enough. So Maggie had, like, there's love between her and Carol. They've known each other for so long. Negan's always been the bad guy. He will always be the guy that killed Abraham. He will always specifically be the guy that killed Glenn and took him away from Herschel. Like, Herschel will never get to know his dad because of you. So that's where it's always, you're always going to be on my shit list. You're never, like, so I don't mind blaming you. And Negan doesn't say anything except for, you still have to choose. Regardless, you can hate me, you can blame me for the situation. At the end of the day, this is your operation. At the end of the day, you can hate me, blame me, but you have to be the one to choose because this is your rodeo. And so she leaves supplies for Alden, even has Negan leave him a knife, and it's like, right, when we come, you better be alive when we come back. He's like, you better come back. And it's like, hopefully things work out. I don't know. But especially when they were leaving at the very end of the episode, Negan killed a walker and looking at that crowbar dripping with brains and blood. And it's like, he's looking at her, she's looking at it. It's like, the last two people you want left alone together no longer have a buffer. Because there was a whole conversation of, stop trying to pretend like you're one of us. He's like, I've helped out people while you're going, people can change. She's like, you're very good at lying. She's like, you might be even so good at lying, you're convincing yourself, but you're not one of us. Basically saying, like, you're not a good person. Like, doesn't, and the Glenn line is proof of it. Like, hey, regardless of how much you've changed, there's still some of that Negan in you. Like, no matter how hard you try to get rid of it, like, who you've become over these years is always going to be so ingrained in you because that's a part of who you are now. No matter how much you want to change, you can't break a decade of being who you've become. The world has hardened everyone, and it just depends on how you respond to that, how the world hardens you. It's like how you respond to it, and Negan responded to it in the way he did. Because there was even that line from Alden where he was like, do you know why I stopped following and listening to him? Because I trust you. Because Maggie was the one that was able to convince everyone, like, to stop working with the Saviors. That was, well, a lot of them, Alden in particular, was like, yeah, I decided to follow you and not listen to him anymore, Thought that was it is kind of an interesting thing of, like, yeah, I honestly, it's been so long, I actually completely forgot about that. It's been so many years that, like, I mean, not just in the time frame of the show, but just the show in general, and I was like, right, I forgot that's where Alden's start was. I forgot how you became a martyr. Legitimately didn't remember that until they brought that up. I was like, right, I completely forgotten about that. So just an interesting element to kind of think about because it's been so long. Also, stuff like that kind of gets you thinking. I mean, final season and all that. I mean, we still got like a crap ton of this season left, plus the other two, but it's still kind of crazy to think about. Like, this kind of gets you like reminiscing a little bit about where the story has been and where it's going and where it will go nearing its end, So I thought that was kind of fascinating. All right, because I was about to say, like, wasn't there someone else it's like, right, we saw, I think the one that got his hand cut off in his throat that was Cole, and Elijah's the one with the mask. We saw him kind of get roped and, like, dragged away, so either, like, him and Daryl got captured, or they're both, like, out in the wild. Maybe they're even together, for all we know. Well, because the last thing we saw was, like, Daryl and Dog together, like, going off. So, once again, fingers crossed. I hope Dog makes it. If Dog dies in, like, the trailer or something, please don't tell me. I don't want to know. I think I saw something kind of leaning towards that, but I kind of don't want to know for sure. I was like, because it's gonna break my heart when the time, because I don't think Dog's gonna survive it. I hope he does, but it's probably not gonna work out like that. But other than that, it's interesting, like, because the title of this episode is Hunted, and it can have two different, well, the main meaning is them literally being hunted this episode, but it's also interesting because Carol and Kelly were looking for the horses, and by the time they come back, it's like, right, Kelly's supposed to be on guard duty with Magna, and Aaron was saying, oh, Carol, you're supposed to be helping us, but she's like, right, like, if I don't find those horses, it's not going to matter about the walls and anything, because we need the horses to be able to go further, because, we're not going, the amount of time it's going to take us to get somewhere on foot and then back is going to take way longer, not on a horse. But two, without horses, we ain't going to be able to carry nothing back more than like a sack of grain. So So she goes out there. Rosita's with her, as well as Magna, which I think is interesting. Rosita says she has this dream where she's like, oh yeah, like Abraham, he's trying to warn me about something. I'm not sure what it is. And then he gets shot. It's like what that necessarily means, what that's signifying. I'm like, what is that about? I wonder, is that going to be something related to Gabriel, or is that something Alexandria related? Once again, I think it's interesting considering, like, I brought it up early. In the comics, he does get shot. Granted, it's a bow and arrow, but, you know, I'm probably like, you know, it's a bit of a stretch, the comparison I'm trying to make there. Like, whether that's supposed to be like a wink and nod to that, or that, what significance that is. But I'm wondering what it is that he is trying to tell her in that dream. Like, because obviously it's like, it must be on some level her well, dreams are very powerful in this universe. We've seen that time and time again, and how significant they can be in certain roles and avenues. But it could also just be like maybe her subconscious is trying to tell her something. What exactly? We'll have to wait and see. But obviously for Carol, she's so desperate to find these horses, because I think just because of everything, it's like she needs to help out, because it's like, right, I'm the reason why a lot of stuff is falling down the way it has. So they end up finding a lot of the horses, but a lot of them are dead. I'm like, oh boy, and seeing them ripped to pieces like that, it's like, oh, that's rough, dude. And it's depressing as hell to see them kind of ripped apart like that. You're like, damn. But they ended up coming across the other horses, leading them to like paddock. They were able to kind of like bring them back, and Kelly's like, right, they're not trying to run, they want to come home. And so they were able to bring them back, and everyone was like, yeah, they brought the horses back, yay. But then Magna has a very important conversation with Carol. She's like, what you're trying to do with Kelly, just stop. And she's like, what are you talking about? I know. She's like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, you might even believe that Connie's dead, but it's like, for her, it's like, doesn't Kelly at the very least deserve to know it? But Magna's like, yes, I love my family, and that includes Connie, but I want my family to heal. And like, Kelly, you keep reopening this wound. You're never giving Kelly enough time on her own to not have, because it's like, it is that thing of like, you always hear it's better to know. And I don't, like, because there have been some things I've watched that have been like, I wish I didn't know. It's hard to say whether 100% all the time, whether or not knowing is always the good thing, whether it's always the right thing or not. So I'm curious, like, should she, like, would it be better for her to know what happened to Connie or not? And that's what, you know, Carol's trying to give her some solace, because she's also, because even Magna's being like, I'm sorry for, you know, what everything that's going on, you know, what happened and what's, you know, because she's still trying to make it up to Kelly about what happened to Connie. And so that's why she feels like, I need to help you get answers. Whether it's that Connie's alive, whether it's her being dead, like, you deserve to know. And then she slit the horse's throat. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, right, food. It's like, yeah, because Aaron was kind of there being like, but he was like, right. It's like, you guys are desperate, you need food. Which there was even a conversation between the kids about everything, which I thought was interesting. About like, right, they're playing, and it's like, right, does your mom always kind of go away for a long time? And Judith being like, yeah, but she always comes back. And it's like, yeah, that there's always that thing of them being like a promise to come back. And I like that line from Herschel being like, yeah, but it's always, it's more so for them than us. It's like, because they want to try and believe that, you know, they're making easing the kid's mind, but it's also like, it's kind of more so for them. It's like, right, I need to kind of keep that in my head of like, I need to come back. I'm going to be back. I'm going to, like, if I don't like submit that promise in my head, then like, they just need it more so for themselves than the kids. And I think that's so interesting for the kids to have that perspective of it. You know, it's like, in this type of world, you kind of have to grow up really quickly. Hell, even Herschel being like, yeah, the horse, it's not too bad. Go, like, just eat it quickly, or, you know, or take long bites or whatever. It's better than the spiders. And it's like, right, kind of showcasing like what kind of place him and like all that him and his mom have kind of been through and where they've been along the way. So, but at the end, we see Kelly going off with Carol, and so despite Magna's warnings, like, Carol kind of still goes along. I wonder, did it give her any pause or reservation who knows? But it's also like, you know, you do see her kind of washing her hands earlier from the blood, and Rosita's kind of like, yeah, because she's showing off to, you know, the baby, the horse. Oh, I like the pony, though, you want to pet? And it's kind of like, right, hopefully. Well, I think it's kind of depressing to know, like, right, we went through the trouble of saving some of these just because the fact is we had to eat one because there was no food here. Two, it's also just kind of like, right, I hope we don't have to get to the point we have to kill the rest of them, because that would kind of suck. It would kind of defeat the purpose, you know? But I think it's also like, right, Carol having to be the one who, you know, for a while she's always been the one that's kind of had to do the things that no one else can do. I feel like that really stepped up in season 4 was like the first season that really showcased itself, that side of Carol, and it's just always been that element there. It's always been a part of her character since then. They're always kind of doing kind of like the dirty job, the bloody job, and that kind of includes the whole. I mean, granted, the Alpha thing was kind of like, that was more so revenge of not really like, oh, it's for the greater good. It's like, no, you wanted revenge because you wanted her dead. You needed her dead, despite everything, time and time again, of what the cost came about for your need for revenge. So, I don't know. Just kind of a lot of interesting things to kind of keep in mind. So, I'm curious whether Magna is going to, like, I guess because Kelly doesn't want to talk about it, especially to her. So it is kind of a thing of like, I know that this isn't giving her time to heal, but also it's like, it gives her something to focus on, but it's giving her false hope, and that's worse, because that hope you keep giving her, eventually her heart's going to be broken so many times. It's not, you're just doing more damage in the long run. It's helping now, it's giving her something to focus on and do now, but in the long run, you're just going to do more damage. I think, you know, Magna's perspective. So whether she'll kind of step in or intervene again, and we'll have to see whether or not things kind of, whether or not there ends up becoming something of that, we'll have to ultimately wait and see. But I'm interested to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live light to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.